Fourth graders, unfortunately we lost our recording because my iPad froze, but I want to remind you that this is lesson 1.2, module 1, lesson 2, and we're talking today about how place value positions that are right next to each other are related, okay? Adjacent means right next to each other. And we solved the problem the day already in our notebooks. So now we're working on labeling these place value positions. So we know that the rightmost one is the ones, followed by the tens. Are you going to freeze again? Followed by the, what would be next, guys? Hundreds. And then the? Thousands. Good. And then the?
Millions.
Not yet. Remember, we have different periods. In each period, there's the ones, tens, and hundreds. So here was our first period. Remember, 3 place value digits together make a period. So I see one period there. There should be another period here. Do you agree? Okay. So if in each period there's a ones, a tens, and a hundreds, after the thousands, there should be a 10,000s. Good. We don't go to the millions yet. 10,000s. Good. And then the 10,000s followed by the, everyone? 100,000s. Good. So to review from what we learned last week, 3 place value positions together makes a period. What is the name of the blue period I just outlined? The ones period. Very good. What is the name of this period here? Everyone? Thousands period. And we can see within each period there's the ones, the tens, and the hundreds. This is the 1,000s, this is the 10,000s, and this is the 100,000s. Don't forget that. Here you can see on my place value chart that I've written 3 circles inside the hundreds column and 2 circles in the tens column. Go ahead and do that on your place value chart. What number is represented by this picture? What number is represented by this picture? Evan? How many are in the hundreds column?
3.
Huh? 3. Okay, how many are in the tens column?
2.
2. So I have a 3 and a 2. How many are in the ones column?
0.
0. So Evan, what number is represented by this picture? So 320 is the number represented by this picture. Now what happens if I make 10 copies of it? Watch what I do, okay? If I want to make 10 copies of the 3, how many would I have altogether? How many hundreds would I have altogether? I would have 30 hundreds. Do you agree? Yes? Because if I make 10 copies of 300s, I get 30 hundreds. Yes? Now what happens if I make 10 copies of the tens? How many tens will I have altogether, Sanvi? 20 tens. So if I make 10 copies of 320, I could end up with 30 hundreds and 20 tens. But do we usually say numbers like that? We know that 30 hundreds is equal to how many thousands? Everyone? 3,000. Good. So instead of 30 tens, I could write 3,000. And instead of 30 hundreds, I could write 3,000s. And instead of 20 tens, I could write 2 hundreds. So now I have 3,000s, 2 hundreds, 0 tens, and 0 ones. So what number do I end up with? 3,200. We had a 3 in the hundreds column, and it ended up in the thousands column. We had a 2 in the tens column, and it ended up in the hundreds column. Do you see that? When we multiplied by 10? It seems like those digits moved over one space to the left, didn't it? Interesting. Okay. Our math problem we're trying to solve now is 4,080 times 10. Go ahead and write that down. And in a new section of your place value chart, let's write that down. We have 4 thousands and 8 tens. Do you agree? Now, if I'm going to multiply, if I want to make 10 copies of my 4,000s, how many thousands would I have altogether? Sornima?
40.
We would have 40 thousands. Do you guys agree? If I have 8 tens and I want to make 10 copies of it, Anushka, how many tens would I have altogether?
8 tens.
If I have 8 tens and I make 10 copies of it, how many tens do I have altogether?
80.
80 tens, thank you. Okay, so one way we could write this answer is 40 thousands and 80 tens. But is that the most simplified way to say this answer? Is it? No. We call this unit form. Everyone say unit form. Unit form is when we just multiply each unit. We multiplied the thousands units and we multiplied the tens units. Okay? But we know that 40 thousands is equal to 4 10,000s. And we also know that 80 tens is equal to how many hundreds? Everyone? 8 hundreds. This is what we learned yesterday, right? 8 hundreds is the same as 80 tens. So therefore, the most simplified or the standard way to write our answer is 40,000, 800. Does that make sense? Now, what are all the different ways we could say this product? Instead of saying 40,800, by the way, that's our final answer, could we say 40,000s? Could we? Could we? I mean, is it 40,000s, 80 tens? Is that the same thing? Is it the same thing as 4,080 tens and 0 ones? Something to think about. For this problem, let's start by putting a 4 in the 10,000s column. Okay. What other digit do you see? Sanvi?
2.
And what column does it go in? Tens column. Good. Now we need to divide each of those by 10 because the question asks us to divide it by 10. Can I do 4 divided by 10 very easily in my head? No. But what I can do is I can rename this. Oops. Instead of thinking it as 4 10,000s, could I think of it as 40 thousands? Is that the same thing? Do you guys agree? Yeah? And why is 40 thousands better than 4 10,000s? Well, because I can easily in my head do 40 divided by 10, can't I? What is 40 divided by 10? Everyone? 4. Isn't that a lot easier than doing 4 divided by 10? So if I rename it, or I think of it in a different way, I regroup, instead of thinking it as 4 10,000s, and I think of it as 40 thousands, it allows me to divide by 10 more easily. Let's use repeated reasoning to do the same thing over here with the tens. Can I do 2 divided by 10? Very easily.
No.
But I know that 2 tens is the same as 21s. Okay, now that I have 21s, I can easily divide that by 10, can't I? What's 21s divided by 10? 2. So for my final answer, I have 4 thousands, 0 hundreds, 0 tens, and I have 2. So what's my final answer? 4,000 and 2. So we can see here when we're dividing by 10, the digits all ended up shifting one space over to the right, one space adjacent to the right. Did the value get bigger or smaller? We started with 40,000 and we ended up with 4,000. Did it get bigger or smaller? Anshul? Smaller. Very good. So sometimes we're going to be given an expression. An expression is like a math sentence. So here we want to make 10 copies of 3 tens. Okay? So and then we're going to have to write it in unit form and then standard form. So to write it in unit form, you keep the unit the same. What unit is given to you here? What place value unit is here? Everyone? 10. So we're going to keep it the same. For unit form, we want to find out how many tens would be in 10 copies of 3 tens. So what's 10 times 3? Everyone? 30. So if I make 10 copies of 3 tens, how many tens do I have? How many tens do I have? If I give you 3 tens and then I make 10 copies of it, how many tens do I have? Everyone?
30.
30 tens. So the unit form, we keep the tens the same because we keep the unit the same. So the answer would be 30 tens. But if I say, hey, can you go to the store and buy me 30 tens apples? Do you know how many apples to buy me? No, because no one says it like that. That's not the standard form. So after unit form, it asks us to write it in standard form. What's the norm? If I have 30 tens, what do I really have? Sparsh? 300. So the standard form would be using numbers. We write 300. for this second example, we have 9 10,000s. The unit we're given is 10,000s. But we can't keep it in 10,000s because we can't do 9 divided by 10 very easily. So we have to regroup it. What is adjacent? What's one place value smaller than 10,000s? Varshini? The thousands, right? So instead of thinking of it as 9 10,000s, we could think of it as how many thousands? Kaship?
9,000.
Is 9,000s the same as 9 10,000s? It has to be 90 thousands. So we have to think of this as 90 thousands divided by 10. And now that's easy, right? Because 90 thousands divided by 10, what's 90 divided by 10? Avani?
9,000.
So in unit form, the answer would be 9 thousands. You know it's unit form when you're writing the word of the unit. Now, how do I write that in standard form? Well, like this, 9,000. Make sense? Good.